Okay, by mistake, the recording wasn't started at the beginning of the meeting, which was called to order at 3:32. The agenda was reviewed and no changes were made. And then we moved to reviewing the minutes from the last meeting. Oh, I think I said October 12th there. The motion might have been, I can't tell if I got the motion wrong, actually, because I can't tell if I did September 27 in it. Maybe we'll have the motion again for the minutes, that we reviewed the minutes in the meeting there. And for the record, we will now have, I will now move to approve the September 27th, 2021 minutes as reviewed and edited. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, and then any discussion? No, then we'll have a roll call vote. Michael, aye. Andy?
Aye.
Tom?
Aye.
Fred?
Aye.
Okay, to approve, they're approved by a 4-0 by roll call. Okay, let's move on.
Michael, may I just ask, just so I have it correct for these minutes, whether Frank and Brad and Griselle are members yet or no?
No, they're not members. We
Okay.
don't have to say that they're absent.
Okay,
Other than the fact that, let's move on to issue of committee membership. Brad, we know, has already applied, and I think we were recommending him, but I guess it has to come forth. They were opening I guess they didn't want to do it until I guess the select board was waiting for 30 days, which is well over. Frank has also filled out an application and sent it, which has all been passed on to all of us who are current members. I like the fact that he's emphasizing the linkage with the planning board, and we could try to do some work together on sustainability issues that overlap with what we're trying to do, as well as what the planning board can do in terms of regulations and things. So I would, if people have any questions or comments about it, I would otherwise make a motion that we recommend Frank and Brad, we'll repeat that one, to the select board for membership on the Energy and Sustainability Committee.
seconded.
Okay, then I guess we'll do it that way. Any discussion? Does anybody have any things to talk about?
Do you happen to know where things are with Griselle, if she also plans?
I think she's doing some work on things, but I'm not sure she was ready to step forward. I think it was going to see what the time requirements are like. She just told me that she couldn't make the meeting today. I got a text. But I think nonetheless, she's willing to do that. She's doing that mothers group and whatever else. So she's
Good.
stepping up and doing some work, and we at some time we could approach her. We have flexibility as to how many members we have, so that there's still room for her.
Point of order, I think we have a motion on the floor, and that's a side discussion for the motion.
Well, yeah, it's a little side. I'll say also for discussion that if after this vote, I'll just write a letter recommending the two of them, that the board, that we voted to recommend them if this is successful. And I'll follow up with a note to the select board to that effect. Any other discussion? Okay, by roll call vote, Michael, aye. Andy?
Aye.
Tom?
Aye.
Fred?
Aye.
Okay, 4-0 that we will recommend Brad and Frank as new members. Okay.
Thanks, guys.
And we got that going. Let's see.
Thanks the two of you.
Oh, who else is on? I can't even tell who's there. I guess I don't see everybody.
Oh,
Brad
wow.
just joined.
Okay, hi, Frank. Oh, Brad, I see Brad's there too. Okay.
Both.
They're all there. Brad's whole family's there. Or part of it. I guess it's -1. Um, let's see, let me go back to get to the agenda thing here. I know when I'm sharing the screen, I can't see everybody who's there. Okay. Guess when people, by the way, when we send in minutes, I mean, if I don't start doing it, maybe since I usually have the final version, maybe I'll start just sending them in. It seems like for some reason, people should CC me. I have to go over it. For some reason, I got an email from the town clerk that some of our minutes are not there, but there are certainly minutes that we've approved. So in the future, I don't just do it directly and I'll CC whoever the author is, or if the author ends up sending them in, they should just CC me, which I think most of you have been doing anyway. But just make sure that I'm CC'd so I can follow up with the town clerk about that. Moving on, I'd like to take it a little out of order and have a discussion of the climate action plan draft and just a broader picture of what it means along with the inventory in terms of an activity that what sort of priority and how we want to tackle that. I sent you out the draft that I guess it's a final report from the author, Adam, that he did for his summer internship project. I mean, he could help a little bit if it had things, but it's now on us to see what we want to do with that. And I'll jump in with the idea for discussion of whether and how useful it is to basically, I don't know, I guess I'll ask people to raise their hands. How many people actually even skimmed or read the report? Okay.
I read it.
Sorry, trying to find the hand.
Oh, Tom, are you on twice, I guess?
Yeah, I got my laptop separate from my phone.
What I liked, I'll just sort of throw out an idea of whether we want to create some sort of report that's a plan that really doesn't have to have, I go back and forth about some of the detail in the report about what it takes at each point. Well, maybe we could keep the whole thing, but essentially the idea of going to the select board with something that shows, in a sense, our inventory, which is what his work is based on, the inventory that Dorothea did, and some spreadsheets that he's going to send us that Dorothea, I, and Gino worked on a little bit with that, sort of gave him feedback on what he did.
Inventory real quick.
Yeah.
So we're talking about page 5 of the document. This actually kind of jumped out to me, how it's stated in the report, which is a great report from what I've read, that per capita Sherborn's averaging 8.7 metric tons of CO2 emissions, which is lower than the Massachusetts statewide per capita emissions at 9.3. That doesn't really pass the smell test with me.
Yeah.
I'll just say to you that that level of detail, I'm not worried about at this point, because I'm not even sure that's the kind of detail, because it's so approximate as to what got included and not included that sometimes it's not even something that I worry about or want to necessarily present, other than maybe in some very approximate stage. That kind of stuff.
Yeah, so my worry is, like, I would not share this information publicly. Like that statistic, like I wouldn't want that to get out to the public, just because I don't believe it. And my expectation is different methods were used to estimate each of those amounts.
No. Oh, sorry. Go on.
Yeah, so that's pretty much the point that I wanted to make, is that, you know, I don't know how we're planning on using this report, but I wouldn't want to potentially give a false perspective on this.
And
I don't really care about any of the numbers per se. I just want to discuss at the highest level of what might be something we want to do with this in terms of the general issues of how much of the how an inventory is presented, how targets are presented along the way, and more importantly, the implementation tasks that he's talking about. Because I have a lot of additions even on how to do what those tasks are. But yeah, I agree with you that, I mean, right, I read that. I mean, I don't like getting even the numbers in some of the tables and stuff. It's like, I prefer much more rounding off, much more, I mean, so people don't get lost in specifics that really don't mean much. But I'll let Tom talk since it's nice enough to raise his hand.
Thank you. I enjoyed reading the report. I think I would suggest for this committee, it's a very good starting point, a rough draft as you're all starting to comment on, for us to, come up with a real plan like several other towns in Massachusetts our size had. So I think it's a good starting point. And I was actually amazed. The other comment I'd make is the amount of change that has to happen in this town to hit the 2030, 2040, 2050 goals. And as it is, by this person's estimates, we never hit the 2050, even with 100% EVs and everything. So it's going to be a challenge in the next 20 years, but I think it's worth working on.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I was going to propose, is that it's got chunks of it that we might want to use. And I don't necessarily want to go into, and at some point, whether a subgroup or something like that works on an outline of what's worth pulling from that and the inventory work. But whether the higher level is whether we agree to create a plan, and that we rework it into a plan that essentially has something about where we are today, where you need to go really to meet that, and how significant a change that is, as Tom says. But with the main part of it being some of the action steps that, I mean, I kind of like his color. The thing I liked a lot was his colorization of tasks by a certain kind of time period, of immediate and short term and longer term, but that we just agree on getting those things and then seeing how they get implemented. And that is sort of to create something fairly short in a way, so that it's not laborious for people to absorb, to make it quite friendly. But it's just a matter of agreeing as to some general uses there. And Fred, your turn.
Yeah, I was just going to add two things. One, I agree with you. I think actually an executive summary might be a good thing. Some people are data driven and want to see the specifics, and other people just want to know what's going on. The other thing I would iterate is I totally agree with Brad that we've got to be really careful about what numbers we put out there. And those don't pass the smell test for me either. And I know that's not what we're discussing particularly, but I wanted to reiterate that concern.
Yeah, right. I don't want to get into comparisons at some extent anyway. We just have a long way to go. And it's doable, but with a lot of effort, and it's part of a statewide community, a group, a world. I mean, it'll be interesting to see what happens at the end of the month at the Copenhagen talks, and whether the US could even pass by some miracle some legislation that shows support for this kind of net zero by 2050. But it's enough of a recurring theme that we all still want to basically promote that kind of approach, even though it's going to take a lot of work. And I think it'll be an interesting tone issue of how do you do the mix between it's doable and but it's a lot of work, and how to not let people lose hope, even ourselves. But so I don't know whether it's I don't know whether at some point how to go ahead, whether it's how high a priority this is when we come back to tasks that people want to work on. To what extent it's a task for some people wanted to think about creating an outline of what we might want to put to the select board, and in essence to the town, really. It's almost like to them, and working it through, and whether it becomes part of a warrant article or not at some point, just to give it, just a forced discussion of what it takes, and whether it's a task that's of particularly high priority to do without taking, I don't want it to suck up too much time, because it's really an umbrella overall document, and and then you just got to figure out what steps to do, and whatever. I guess I'm looking for what people think about what priority it should be of all the different things we could do if I pull up the spreadsheet issue of what tasks people are doing, and who wants to work on it. And again, I think it should be a fairly, whether it's a good fat executive summary, actually, with that, it might be just, I mean, it could be different documents, a good executive summary, and then maybe, you know, there's lots of ways to do it that I could see. But it's a matter of what people want to work on that, and whether you all agree that it's something that we want to do in the next few months or something like that. Feedback, ideas? I guess it comes down to who wants to put in work and whether anybody wants to do that kind of stuff is, which, I mean, I don't think it's, I mean, it's tricky.
What I might suggest, Michael, I'd be happy to start some work on it, but I'm not interested in slaving over like a 75-page document that nobody ever reads again, but like, you know, a 5 or 6 or 10-page one with a 1.5-page executive summary, just pointing out that if you want to align with the state's goals, here's what's going to have to happen. And I think, you know, it's going to shock a lot of people, but that's what might be required. And of course, the bigger question is, you know, based on a review by this committee, would the committee want to ask at town meeting, you know, do you want to adopt the Massachusetts goals, or what do you as a town want to commit to?
Is the state?
Tom, I'd be willing to work on you with you on that, because I think it is a good report. I actually just scanned it and realized I read the whole thing once, which to me is a scan. But I'd be happy to work with you on that and see what we come up with.
I mean, I agree. Of the shorter, the better. That gets the meat of it there with some meat about what the steps are, even if they're very summary. And people could always ask for more, and we could always provide some underlying stuff. But I agree with you that short is better, and not get caught up in a lot of little. Right. It's how you even present some of the numbers, or whether they're worth just saying all the numbers are there. But it's like, okay, if you got to get to all electric cars, you got to do a lot of electric cars the way. You've got to get all the houses there. I mean, to me, it's it means that we got to get a lot of houses converted to heat pumps, and we got to get all our renewable energy. Because I had issues about a lot of the resilience things. I didn't like, actually, what was put under resilience versus should be put under mitigation. And then like in the solar there, and whether we need more on what is resilience, and whether the stormwater and the flood control needs a little attention there. Andy?
Yeah, by the way, I cannot find that computerized hand raise on my screen for some reason, so I apologize for having.
You don't see reaction?
Oh, in reaction. Yeah,
Reactions.
there it is. Got it. Okay, thank you. Thank you. All right. So, but anyway, my comment, my comment is, I think Tom is correct that we should not be spending an enormous amount of time developing a document that nobody reads. And perhaps an executive summary would be a good way to go to get the word out that it's an issue. But I think it was also Tom who raised the question as to it might encourage the town to support endorsing the state goals of 2030 and 2050. And I am not aware whether the towns have the authority to not attempt to meet those goals. I think it's not voluntary.
That's what I was wondering. What's the legal, I mean, I don't know if there's a penalty if you don't do it, but I'm just wondering what's the bite or how does it work? Are they mandates?
Yeah, that's what,
That's an excellent question. I've read that state plan 2 or 3 times. The only thing I can get out of it, and I'm sure Dorothea or Gino might have a better answer. The only thing that seems definitive is the state legislature did commit to ban internal combustion automobiles after 2035. But other than that, it seems like the heat pumps and everything else, it's a goal. I don't see any stick. I just see carrots. Am I wrong? I don't know.
yeah, but that's a different question from whether the town has the right to opt out of trying to meet those goals.
Right, it's the
What
tone of
hap-
how you
what-
write an executive summary, the tone of it. Is it the tone of, this is what we're all doing, we got to do it together versus here's something to try for? I mean, it's that flavor of the executive summary about
Right.
that is it something like, well, let's try to do this versus we have to do it.
Exactly, exactly.
I don't know what tone to use.
I can tell you what tone I think we should use.
Yeah. Mhm.
Otherwise, it'll never be followed.
Right. I mean, I guess in the end, even if it's too harsh, I'd rather have it be not harsh, but it's just what we have to do, because
Ex-
otherwise we're not doing our responsibility to the
Right.
issue, even if it does come across as too much, maybe for some. But I guess that's a language whether we want to give guidance to, or whether that's if Tom and Fred, or I mean, I'm more than happy to review things, whether even out of this meeting, whether we just get a sense of what's the overall tone. And Frank said he's willing to help, even though just note that I will sometimes see chat, or I guess all of you will. But okay, I mean, I would think that whether we're all in agreement that the tone should be, it's a state act, we're all trying to do part, and we have to do our role. Whether we all feel comfortable with that. I do.
I as well.
What more do we want to say about it? Or I'll go Frank.
One of the things that I've been noticing about all the work that this committee does in sustainability, from townspeople that I've been speaking with, and that I've been getting involved with this and so on, is that it is our committee's job to do all this work. And I think one of the things that's really important is that we need to change that thought process to, it needs to be everybody's job to work on this. And, we're all in this together. We can, this committee can coordinate, can provide education, can provide, access to, grants and information and contractors and people and advisors and consultants and all of that. But everybody's, I liken it to a journey. We're on this journey to improve our environmental footprint. We're all on this journey to reduce carbon and greenhouse gas emission. And everybody individually is on a journey. So how do we get everybody in this town to join this journey from where they are to get to where we need to be? And I think there's many access points, and there's the access point through the heat pumps, there's access points through the solar, there's access points to what we can do to reduce what we're doing. Like somebody spoke to me about the buses at our schools are, you know, they've got 2, 3 kids on the bus because all the parents are driving their kids because of COVID. You know, we should bring some awareness to that effect. Well, you know, again, it's everybody in Sherborn that needs to be on board with this and not just our committee. So I think that's a really important part to communicate if we're going to do anything warrant article, that it's a buy-in by everybody. It's not just, you know, us doing it, you know, us 9, us 10. If we go to 20, if we go to 50, if we go to, you know, half the town, it's still not enough. We need everybody involved in this.
As I said before, when you raise your hand, we'll see how this goes, rather than me being a little intermediary. Like, for example, you, Dorothy, as soon as Frank ends, since you're the only hand up or the next hand up, you could just start speaking when Fred ends. And then each of us could just sort of see our turn and just start speaking without me going, oh, and now you, Dorothea. So I'm less intervening. So go ahead, Dorothea.
I'll be brief. I think that's a very good point that Frank made in the towns. You know, when we come to the climate action plan, we really have to think about how we implement it in the town government and find people that will be heading a working group across all boards and committees, so that it really becomes an action plan that everybody in town understands to be part of. So it doesn't help us to just talk about the goals and the steps. The most important part is that we will ask, for this to be effective, we need to make this into a governmental structure and assign people to move this plan forward. And that's where we have to really engage with the boards and committees. And I think a warrant article would be great to start with that, and just setting that goal, to have a working group and to establish that as a first step. And then from there, I think we can look at an implementation plan.
Michael, Brad has his.
Yeah, no, Brad, I was waiting to see if Brad would just intervene without me saying anything. I was testing my new approach of, but yes, Brad, just so you know, when you try to do that really flesh colored hand, it doesn't stick out as much as the yellow hand. So it's a little less obvious. But I was waiting to see if you would just jump in.
I'll have to do my my more summer hand look next time. Yeah, so a couple of brief points. I fully agree with what others have said about the executive summary, and that, you know, it should be a brief type of top level overview, like you were saying, Michael, and just kind of, you know, kind of present the top level kind of trend take home message of, you know, proportionally there needs to be substantial adoption of EVs and you know, green you know, home energy heating and cooling solutions to hit these targets. I think that really is kind of take home message. And then who would see this executive summary? How would that be circulated?
Talking about the report getting circulated, whatever we create.
No, the executive summary, like the summary of the report. That's what
we would. I mean, we could present it to the select board, get people to do that. We could call our own town meeting of that, along with a lot of other things where we want to do educational aggregation. There's a lot of means. It could be on the website. It could be, there's a whole set of means and sending it out, and it goes to all the different committees, and we could go around. You can go around to different committees, like the open space plan went around. Basically, a draft was created. It was sent to different committees that were all relevant, and then you actually got on their agenda. So you get on the planning board agenda, you get on the conservation, and you go there and you present for 5 or 10 minutes and see what questions and issues they have. But it just starts getting exposed. So there's a number of ways that we could spread the word about it. And then, but a lot of it comes down to, so in terms of the select board be the way we do it more, but then it's still underlying that is really what implementation steps we build into it and doing them. So it's to be, the plan is educational and it tries to galvanize some support, but it's a lot of it comes down to what steps there really are to be done and how we actually do those. That's why I agreed. I don't want to spend a lot of time on the plan itself versus being clear about the steps to implement the plan and do some of them.
Yeah, I agree. Effort's better spent actually doing things than just talking about it doing them.
Is there much more to talk, what people want to say about the plan itself? And there's also the, other than, I guess I saw that Tom, Fred, and Frank are willing to play around with it. I'm willing to give a read or a review of sorts, and how much, because right, it could get a little, once you're getting down to wordsmithing but it's almost a matter of, I'd suggest almost an outline. I'll interject of how much it's an outline and maybe some beginning draft of an executive summary is something that others could react to before it gets a lot of effort put into certain things. And maybe that's something the committee could review, or just it's reviewed internally amongst a subgroup on that level. That's just my 2 cents of the next step, and how much more to talk about it now, I don't know.
The working group can
Work that out.
bounce that around and come back at the next meeting and make
Okay.
some suggestions. That's my thinking.
Anything more now from anybody? We move on. Okay. Where were we? I guess we've put off. You weren't here last time, Brad, but since you weren't here and you did a lot of work on the environmental justice, I just will say that, or maybe you saw it in the minutes, that at the moment we're going to wait and see a little bit of what comes out of the fact that given how many things we have to do and the complexity of that Dorothea was going to keep in touch with what the other groups, such as the churches, are doing on that, to see if there's some sort of joint effort we could do, or leveraging that, or not, as well as the fact that we do have, I was suggesting that we do have a little bit of work we can try to see to do with our affordable housing groups. We need Woodhaven for the senior housing and Leland Farm for some lower income housing, as well as any 40B projects that we'll try to see what we could get going, especially in those two. And speaking on that one, the board of Leland Farm is not meeting until next week. So we'll wait and see what Alicia Goody, who's the town rep on that board, will come back about their interest in mass save, insulation, and solar. So we'll learn more there. I haven't had time to do anything more unless somebody else wants to pick up a little ball on seeing about what might make sense at Woodhaven, since they are using electric heat. And they have individual electric hot water heaters in each unit and individual AC and stuff like that. So they might be a ripe candidate, and there are a number of affordable units there. So that's the route in terms of doing any EJ work that we came up with last time. And that's my little update on at least the Laurel Farms and Woodhaven. I haven't done that any further work on. I don't know if anybody else any follow-up there. Dorothea?
Yeah, I had a conversation with Ron Jansen from a Pilgrim Church, and he was bringing me up to their 3-year initiative that's coming together and is in the beginning stages of finally putting, they had a member inquiry, a survey, what members thought was important the next couple of years. And among them was environmental justice. And he was asking me how that could potentially look like. And I felt we were discussing a couple of things, including the fact that I want to come to church and talk to people that do have good roofs and talk about solar and air source heat pumps, and was asking him to involve me in these meetings. And he got back to me and said he would. One of the ideas I brought forward was like, if people had overproduction on their solar roofs, that could be then given to affordable housing within the community and outside. And I think that fell on positive ground, so to speak. But it will take time for him to start that initiative and to get me connected to these people. It's not going to be happening fairly soon. So I see the connection being built, and I will keep you updated what comes out of it. But I told him I'm ready to meet with members of the congregation and to look at their homes, and offered my help in any way as an energy coach. And he sees that as a resource, and he'll talk about that in the meetings.
Okay, thanks.
Could we
Sure.
also not talk a little bit about maybe getting in contact with the coordinator in Framingham and seeing, because it's a local community to us, what they're doing with EJ work?
Yeah. I had a conversation with Sean Lutz last year in the fall. And I think we wanted to meet with John Higley. We're still on the planning board, and it never came together. So that fell off the track. And I would like to revisit that, especially with the prospect that we might get some traction at the Pilgrim Church and need to find some nonprofits in Framingham and in our own community that we want to, build connections with. So, Fred, if you like, we could reach out to Sean Lutz together and see, or Gino and I could do that. I'm not sure how we should proceed with that.
I think it's just finding out what they're doing, and if there's a way for us to assist. We
Yeah.
talked about not walking up and taking over anything, which
Yeah,
is not the right approach.
Mhm.
But to
Exactly.
find, just as a start, just what are they doing, if anything?
I thought, well, I thought out of the last meeting, I mean, if people have time to do it and you want to do that, fine. To the extent it was, though we can't last time, that's probably, even if we could see what overlaps, but whether that was not necessarily the highest priority for what time people had was to deal with that, because it's not clear that we would really have much to offer them anyway,
Right.
once we
That's
learn
why-
about it. So therefore, but that's where I thought we left the last time, that it was worth waiting and seeing for stuff in town and build on, leverage on what the churches are doing, because it's unclear that we would really have resources to significantly contribute to Framingham's group issue. But I don't want to derail if you want to do it.
I think it's more just I don't think we're looking to commit to anything or doing it, just to find out what is a town so close to us with EJ community in it doing, and maybe there's nothing we can help with. I'm perfectly happy with that, but I thought we talked about touching base with them just to find out what they're doing, not to make a commitment, not to say we're going to do anything, but what are you doing in Framingham, and maybe if Pilgrim Church gets involved with it, maybe but the information would be useful. Is all.
Yeah.
And to follow up on that, on Fred's point, I think one of the keys to our success is Dorothea's involvement with other towns, and finding out what's working regionally among other towns that we can borrow and apply here. Dorothy, I know you've got great contacts, and I certainly don't want to put you on the spot now to report out as to things that programs that you are aware of elsewhere that we may consider. But I think perhaps at the next meeting, we should add to the agenda that it'd be great if you could educate us as to some of the innovations that you're seeing.
I can touch base with Natick and Framingham to see what they have to say about that. I don't know if real programs exist. EJ communities are identified based on census and other.
Yeah, no, excuse me. I wasn't limiting it to just EJ
Yeah.
issues, but everything else that is a part of our mission. I mean, what are other communities that may be much further along than us? What are they doing to tackle climate change that we might be able to apply here?
I guess what I hear you saying, and that my hand is raised on the issue of, right, if you're going to meet with Framingham, it's the bigger agenda of what are they doing that we can possibly do with, it's both not only the EJ, but what are they doing, if there is anything that would be something we can learn from, as well as whether there's anything we could do with them as for feeding into a regional project that might not just be necessarily EJ, and just make it that broader agenda as part of doing it, where EJ is just one of 2 or 3 things to go over.
Exactly.
Once you get his attention, which is what I hear you saying, and it makes some sense to use it the time that way.
Well,
Right.
maybe Andy, your hand is up. I just want to say maybe we should invite Sean Luss to one of our meetings to hear what can be done.
But I think, again, I think it would be great to have the energy coordinator for Framingham come and talk with us, but I would be more interested in the broader or regional initiatives out there. You know, you're involved with, I know, several groups that are multi-town. And so maybe I'm wrong, but I've been impressed, Dorothea, with your grasp of what's going on elsewhere. And I think that should be presented to the whole committee so we could be educated as well. And then from that, we might have a better idea as to what tasks and programs we should try.
Mm. Well,
with that, and following up from what Andy said with my hand being raised, and trying to follow Michael's protocol, taking the helm here, I agree 100% with Andy that Dorothea has a huge wealth of knowledge, connections, backgrounds, and connection into what's happening around. And I think the key thing that I hear Andy saying that could really benefit us is just to learn from and maybe cherry pick from those initiatives that are A, successful, or B, that is already has so much buy-in, so much pull, so much momentum that it's easy for us to jump onto. And we don't have to reinvent the wheel. We can utilize a lot of the things that they're already using. We could steal the articles, the words, put it on our website, and just be tag along with it with everybody else.
Absolutely.
I think it's a great idea. And there's no better person to help us to see that and help lead us forward to that. Then Dorothy, I agree with Andy as well. And I know that Mike, you've probably done a lot of that too. So, I think that could help us be successful because it just expands the amount of things that we have in our toolbox to be able to accomplish what it is that we want to try to accomplish. And, maybe part of this executive summary that we'll be working on, we should be also having touching base with Dorothea, to pull those items out so that's in there as well.
mm-hmm.
So, I think both those two things go together really well.
I don't know, you would say that, whether you want to answer, I mean, right, Dorothea, do you want to reply to that, or whether the fact that there's so much, as if there's so much going on, that's not
Exactly.
clear to me, versus the fact that once we decide on what programs and things we think are important, whatever things we do, that's when somebody tries to look out for other towns to see whether there's some way to do it together, or what, or to learn then, versus that it's not clear that there's so much going out there that's that's been so phenomenally successful
Mhm.
that she has the time or there's that resource there. From what we see, I mean, we have to go see what MAPC has done, but right, I can't tell. It's a chicken and egg between whether we figure out what program we want to do and then we research what other towns are doing, or whether that you go throw the net out there to see what's anybody done that's worked. But I mean, it is an interesting issue of how much you feel you have time. Right, I could see the comment there, versus how much you have the time to do it, Dorothea, or each of us pick a town and even call up their coordinator and say, what are you doing that's really working? And or how much you feel
Well,
that that's something you have time
you know,
for.
what I would do, Michael, in that case, and you guys want to get information quickly, and I would probably reach out to the folks that we're connected with in our residential climate program and ask them if they're doing any kind of EG work and what has been successful and not, and then we'll hear back. I'm sure that the towns that do have EG communities like Framingham and Natick have been successful in their grant applications and acquiring money for, you know, improvements on affordable housing or something like that in that area. But the question is, how does Sherborn come in with that? How do we connect to that? As we said, money transfer is not the way to go. Is
I'll
there
just
maybe?
stop you with a point of information. I think people are talking about not just EJ,
Yes,
Okay.
exactly.
about other things.
Exactly.
So that I just didn't want you to go too far. That's why I was interrupting, is that it's
Okay.
really the issue of just what programs we want to do, as if there's this stuff going on around us that's so wonderfully successful that we should just be doing, versus the fact that it's not that simple an issue.
Mhm.
And how we find out if anybody's succeeding in any of the things with heat pumps or with cars and
Okay,
whether we
now I
know.
understand. Okay, yeah, sure. That is an easy ask. I mean, if what programs are going on. And I basically can tell you a little bit what I heard from the recent kind of like a heat pump and a solar drive, or solarized, I don't want to call it, but from the RFP that Natick, Holliston, I think Ashland and Framingham did. And I think they had 200 signups for assessment. So they did have over the summer quite a few events. I want to say maybe up to 15. David Green was involved in that to a particular point. This is it. I mean, 200 homes for assessment. I don't know how much will be turned over, but given that among those 4 communities, we're looking at, and you have to help me here, but Natick is 37,000. Holliston, I think, is about 15. Framingham is how many?
A lot.
A lot. So David was saying close to 100,000 residents and 200 signups for assessment is after a heavy campaign. I'm kind of shocked about that. After a long RFP process and that, I don't know what to say about this, but I find if, you know, I probably connect with residents one-on-one and pick up the telephone book and call them and promote the Mass Safe and other programs, it will be more successful. That's my conclusion on that.
Dorothea, and I guess everybody, I think we need to have, we should really explore this a little bit more. And maybe one of the ways to go would be to talk with MAPC or some of the other regional organizations that mostly you, Dorothy, are involved with, and just raise the question, what's working out there? What, as Frank pointed out, what can we do that's working out there? Is it feasible? Is it going to result in accomplishment? Instead of, again, we're just kind of like, I feel like we're groping around in the dark. And I just think, a more planned out approach would probably behoove us. And so instead of just responding now as to what was going on in Framingham, Natick, and Ashland, I think I would suggest that the committee, or you in particular, Dorothea, maybe need to reach out to some of the more progressive towns out there, or MAPC, ask them that particular question. What's working? What should we avoid? How can we make a difference? And then report back to us, say at the next meeting.
We have an issue of how much time Dorothea has and what she splits it, her activities, and to what extent it falls back on us.
Right.
Well, there's going to be always there's that ambiguity as to what, right, it depends whether you, Dorothea, in your scope of things, feel like you want to do some of that, and whether it's on some of us and who to follow up with and how we split up that task. Because in a way, it comes back to the list of activities to do. What programs, if any, do we want to run? And then it's a matter of who, and before designing what that activity is or program, whether whoever wants to work on that is going to be doing that kind of looking around at what has worked anywhere. And so I guess it comes back to you, Dorothea, what you want to, before you should probably add some, maybe Dorothea, and then Fred can go about what it is that you have time to and what versus and want to do versus what others of ours should just parse up, calling a few towns or calling the state and green communities or talking to this Mass Energized group to see. I mean, somebody could attend. I guess I'd go back to attending the Mass Energized, which is about a dozen communities, and go back to them where they've seen what tasks have really worked and has anybody had success with the Mass Energized take action stuff and what has worked. I kind of dropped the ball of going to their monthly meetings. But I guess we do have to, because it comes back to what do each of us want to do for what time we do have.
Perhaps one way of,
Let me,
I'll just jump in, and then Dorothea, you can incorporate what I'm going to say, but perhaps it's not a question of Dorothea calling 20 towns between now and the next meeting.
Right.
A few towns and adding one question to Andy's questions, which is, what other towns should we be talking to that are successful? Then she can come back and say, look, I got a list of 20 towns. Who's going to help me? Or I've talked to every town and there's no point in helping me anymore. It's all good. But I think that would be an approach that would work between now and the next meeting. Just talk to a few towns that the coordinators already, and then ask what other towns should we be talking to that are doing good things? Because Ann Berg's doing great stuff, and people are probably up in who knows where, Rennie are doing great stuff.
I agree with that.
good. Then I'll certainly reach out to my climate residential program folks and ask them what they're currently doing in town and help us to understand whether their programs and outreach programs have been successful. What I'm doing in town is, as I suggested, I'm hoping you all agree with that. I have pulled the addresses and the people that have solar, air source and ground source heat pumps here in Sherborn. And I've written an outreach letter and sent that out today for us to see if they want to help us in building a so-called kind of like resource group where homeowners can reach out and get good kind of like ambassadors, if you want to say, to help people to get firsthand advice from neighbors. And I think that will particularly fly well in Sherborn, and our town administrator thinks it's a great idea. And that's my next approach, to see if people really want to help us either with a Zoom group or build a network, kind of like address list where residents can call them up. And I think that's the way to go about in Sherborn.
I think that's great, but I think that's a little bit off the subject that Fred raised, the proposal that Fred raised. I support your approach, Fred. I think that if you simply, Dorothea, could get a sense as to what towns out there should be talked with, or what regional groups should be talked with, come back to us, we could figure out whether this is something, or you could tell us, hey, I can easily do this. They have a list already. It's just a matter of providing it to all of us, or whether you need support from the committee, then we can help out.
What do you mean exactly with that, Andy? Needing help to reach out to my colleagues?
Right.
No,
Yeah.
I don't. I really don't, because I'm plugged in with that. But everybody is struggling with the same problem, that they're doing campaigns, but they're not necessarily successful in bringing these numbers back that they're hoping. And I think that's something, as Jillian recently said, she doesn't even know herself how to tackle that. When it comes to residential outreach, and I'm trying my things, and other people do larger campaigns because they have the capacity and I don't. I'm reaching out to residents directly, and I have connected to 3 of them and have supplied them with good kind of like advice. And I see that this is kind of like more effective than running and having social media and other things. I think you have to connect with people on events. And that's where I need help on. If I show up an event, and I think Fred has done a phenomenal job with the EV show. And Fred, please correct me if I'm wrong, but you're saying if we can plug into an already existing event, then we can reach many more people than just running a show by ourselves and in our town without kind of an base event that carries that forward.
Dorothy, if I hear what you're saying correctly, you're saying that the conclusion out there among your town counterparts, the counterparts from other towns, is that the campaigns that are being run are not successful.
I don't want to say are not successful, but they're not, in given our climate goals 2030, 2040, are not reaching by any means what needs to be done. And they don't run it's not 1,000 people that want to have air source heat pumps.
Right.
And that's just a matter of fact. I mean,
all right, or that I may restate it, then the response that these towns are getting is pretty small.
It's pretty small.
Okay,
exactly.
So if that conclusion is correct, then maybe we need to try something else other than, yeah, we got to work within our own town with, as you say, one-on-one and all of that.
Sure.
But maybe some of the regional organizations, maybe we should enlist the help of some of the universities in the area that are involved with climate change policy and talk with them. Maybe they could provide us some guidance as to what we should be doing to get more bang for our buck.
And the question is, who's going to do that? And whether, right? It's the overall problem of we have whatever 8 people here or 7 people here, and it's a matter of whether even that new idea that you just put on the table, or even if Frank says, what is the program? I mean, Frank, your chat is the same thing that we're struggling with. What's the good use of our time? And Dorothea's is using the sense of that it's a one-on-one, try to sort of start the snowball, but sort of on the one-on-one or the group who have already been who are already sold on the stuff to be a resource in terms of the list of people that she's working from. That's maybe the beginning of the little snowball that could be worked from versus, and whether, but right, depends on if you want to pursue that time there, Dorothea, and whatever else, whether you, and I guess it's a matter of whether you say you have time to go talk to any of the other people, or whether you've talked to enough of the other coordinators that you don't have any, that nobody has a new insight as to what to do, that we need to know, and whether that's a good use of your time between now and the next meeting. It's maybe not to get any more info versus where your Andy is asking for, whether we go spend the time of more resources on looking at what other programs there are, or in this case, go to a university, and whether that's a job that one of us has to take on versus whether Dorothea has time to go call up some climate people, whether it's a Tufts or Babson or who knows, a brand or whatever local group is trying to figure out how do you get communities to do stuff.
Right, that's the question.
And that's the question of whether anybody's researching that,
Money.
and whether and whether in the end it's the whole policy push. When you say money, it's like, okay, without a big wad of an incentive, for example, that's why the top-down approach is what a lot of people spend time on, and whether we should be campaigning more for bigger incentives for things, and that's going to be better use of our time than even doing the one-to-one for some of us. Or I mean, I'd still like to think on the programmatic side that maybe we could make a big push for mass save and funnel it through.
Correct. I'm just raising my hand.
Something that I would like to think we could do on separate from what Dorothea is doing.
Correct. I'm just saying, here, this is my conclusion, being in this for many years in my own town in Sherborn. It is really something that sustainability coordinators really trying to tackle, is how do we get residents to do the right thing? Because you're talking about really investments. And I mean, Brad here knows exactly what he's talking about. Just bought a home and did solar and other things to his house and air source heat pumps. It's major investments. It's a question, how do you create trust in people that they do the right investments, right? And I personally think, and I've heard that many times in this town, it's more neighbor to neighbor in education. And I think this approach I'm currently pursuing, which is sending letters to people that have done their work, help us to convince others, will be more fruitful than just posting stuff all the time about how good it is to put in air source heat pumps. So, and I think there are more comments from Brad and Frank.
Yeah, I mean, my own personal story is, I had kind of a storm. Like, this is to expect, just a campaign to, make someone willing to drop tens of thousands of dollars. Like, that's, you're dealing with some significant inertia there. And, for me, I was dealing with an old oil boiler. I was dealing with an AC system that was on its way out, and then zero frigates were what they were. So it's, it's not going to be easy to get people to, just with, fully functional setups to want to just switch. I mean, that's a huge investment on their part. And so, we might just need to, have the expectation that this is going to be kind of a rolling adoption. And that, when your oil boiler goes, when your Chevy Impala goes, it's not time to get with the future. But to expect someone to, to ditch a 5-year-old oil boiler, 10-year-old oil boiler, to drop tens and tens of thousands of dollars on, like, air source heat pumps and solar, that's tough.
Just so you know, Brad, I don't know if others agree, I hear him very choppy.
Yeah, it's very hard to follow you.
Okay, so just so you know, whatever connection you
Oh.
have and however you're doing it, it's hard to hear you, understand you, even though we got the gist of it, I think.
Sorry.
Oh,
I'm at work.
yeah, they work, they don't pay enough for good internet connection, well, they know you're not doing your regular work. The, but whatever, we got the point. You're right. It is tricky to figure out how to do that kind of stuff. But okay, so other people have their hands raised, I guess.
So I'll try. I'll try to make this really quick. We got this thing several years back, around 2015, 16, Solarize Sherborn, and it was kind of like this town initiative to try to get solar panels on houses, and there was a lot of outreach and a lot of kind of buzz around that, and it's something that was always in my wife and my mind, is to try to do something to help the environment and so we ultimately decided we join in on this. This was potentially a good time. The town was encouraging it, and I think we're getting economies of scale because there was so many neighbors in Sherborn to be able to. I don't know all the details of the program, but we wanted to do it, and there was an initiative. We jumped in, and I think that if for any of these things, if there's an initiative and enough outreach and enough word of mouth, that the climate, greenhouse gases, the environment, kind of going back to Brad's, environmental justice, but at home, there will be some buy-in. I agree with Brad also that some of it may just be too expensive. There might be some things that people are already looking at wanting to do and wanting to get into this, but they don't necessarily know how, which kind of goes back to my journey thing. But I think the point I wanted to make that is different from anything we've said before is if we had some way of quantitating how we are doing with this, I think that would also be a great help and a great visual that, like at the triangle in town, where 16 and 27 split, that we had this big sign and we had like this big, plug, and I don't know what the image is. And we look at we put an indicator with the number of houses or the amount of kilowatts or megawatts our town is using for energy. And as it's dropping to hit this certain goal, that we can come in and celebrate that we've hit this goal and we've done this, and we have a big party and celebrate our successes, and hopefully along the way we can get a few grants in there and a few other kinds of things to help encourage people to make the change now, to continue to focus on the change. And I think part of that, and I guess if you don't mind, I don't know when is the best time. I didn't see it on the agenda, so I just want to do a little shout out. So I'm going to take a second hand right now and do this shout out, and that is to both Fred and Dorothea. Fred organized these EV shows. I went to the ones in Sherborn. I went to the DS middle school one on the Friday night, and I went to UAC on the following Saturday morning. And only really had 2 hours, but we ended up spending 4 hours worth of time there. And I got to say that a fair number of people came through, and there was a lot of buzz about it, and created more interest thanks to Fred and Fred's wife was Joanna, who were there at both of them and pulled cars. I couldn't believe, from all over the place. We had people from Walpole, Norwood, Framingham, Melrose. People were coming from everywhere to both of these car shows. It was really pretty awesome. And the other person I want to shout out is Dorothea. She spent the whole time there, especially on the Friday evening when it was freezing, wearing this jacket And let me tell you, there was not one person that didn't come by looking at a car show that Dorothea didn't talk to for at minimum, at both this Friday and the Saturday, at minimum of 15 minutes, if not longer, talking about, you know, energy sustainability stuff. It was, you know, I think a really, really amazing effort. And I just wanted to point that out and not let that fall by the wayside, that we are very fortunate to have those advocates, and I'm very happy to be associated and be part of a group that has people that are that enthusiastic and that willing to spend so much of their time on a topic like this. And with that, I'll shut up.
Cool. I'll follow up a little with Brad and a little with Frank. A solar program is different. The complexity that we face now with electric cars and heat pumps is tricky. A solar array on a roof is like a canned product. You can do a sort of easy standard analysis of the pros and cons of it. The heat pumps, the electric cars, the roof is 20 grand, but it's a much more canned project, easy to sell and show the analysis. Everything else is much more complicated. So it is a little tricky to figure out how to do it and how to get people to hook into it, how to maybe find people drawing building permits. I mean, it comes back to whether we should be working more at the level of getting a better building code in place, and whether that's the best attention for us is some of those kind of initiatives at that level, and to work with the building inspector to see who's coming in to replace things, and catch people that way, to do things versus a program. And but on the other hand, as a program, part of why I'm interested in the insulation thing is I think that's a little bit more cookie cutter and canned to just get them to do the mass save stuff. And whether that's, I mean, not that we have to tackle everything because we have limited resources, because we can spend a lot of time talking at these meetings about things to do, the difficulties trying to find out more about that versus, okay, do we know enough to fix some things that people want to do and just do it? We could talk about a lot of things, but I don't want to spend a lot of time. Sometimes I can't tell whether it's the best use of our hour and a half or so, how to figure out what is the best use of this hour and a half so that we actually get something done here at the end of this meeting as to who's doing what next, or how we're figuring out what we do next, versus, I mean, I had the spreadsheet, we could talk a lot about things, but I'll try to figure out how we actually get off. I mean, I have my things, I keep on to work on the solar. I feel like this mass save thing is important to do. And I think with Frank there and his point there, whether that's maybe working with the planning board on whether the zoning regs have to change, could you do something? And can you get the building code, and whether that's the bigger thing is that we should try to do the building code stuff where it's net zero and people should, I'm not sure we're going to ban natural gas and fuel oil, but whether there are things to do there, that because we can get lost in all the different things and the fact that they're hard to do. Maybe there are other things that, and whether somebody wants to spend the time figuring out what other people have done, but it's very hard in other towns. And Dorothy is doing the sort of more one-on-one, door-to-door, try to build the snowball, and maybe that's all she really has time for. And whether people want to find out some school that wants to tackle what in the world do people do that works, that's maybe somebody could step forward on. But I'm just trying to figure out how's the best use of are people going to work on the cap. I'm not quite sure how much it's 4:56, how much more people are around to talk, but how much we sort of know what we have a bandwidth for and what people are interested in, and whether I don't know how much it's worth talking about all these bigger picture things versus we've settled on some set of tasks in the short run and reevaluate them from time to time. I'll stop there.
Okay, then I'll jump in real quick because I do need help, because there will be another event at the Pine Hill School. Saturday, October 30th, they have a trunk and treat show, and I expect a lot of Pine Hill parents showing up. And I was wondering if Fred wanted to make himself available again. I don't have an EV right now. I have returned my EV. So I would need maybe 1 or 2 EVs at the Pine Hill School and need these trunks to be decorated. Maybe Frank can show up as well with his EV. And I think that would be an opportunity to do many things at the same time, talking about EVs, talking about homes, a mass safe energy assessment, collecting people's home addresses and stuff like that. So I would like to see some feet on the ground. And then Fred, did I see your hand raising here?
I was about to raise my hand. I just didn't want you to raise it yet.
Very good manipulation.
But no, I was actually about to raise my hand. I just was listening to Dorothea. I can use, why don't you and I connect offline?
Yeah.
And we'll talk about, I've got 40 potential cars, but obviously we're not going to go that route anymore. But I think there are some locals who would be quite happy.
Yeah.
What's the time? Could you send out the time and window and whether just for that thing there and whether it's just basically just having more bodies there to just talk with people, as you say, in the bigger picture, is just a good task for us.
Well, what I need is like, I'd like to have at least 2 people there. And I'm thinking about Frank and Fred. And Fred could also, if you wanted to do some more, campaigning for UCCA with these younger families, with kids of young age. And I will try to put together some materials about mass safe, materials about air source heat pumps, and eventually really talk to people. And that's the only way they can understand how important it is. And that will be Saturday on Halloween between 3 and 5 at the Pine Hill School. So that would be my way to really focus and spend my time there, because I know there will be at least 13 cars, trunks decorated, and I would need some help. I don't have money to buy pumpkins and stuff like that, so I don't have a budget. So maybe you guys can put your heads together.
And
But this
Dorothy,
is-
I'm sorry, I missed the time on that. I know it's the November 6th.
Saturday, 30th of October from 3 to 5.
3 to 5. 3 to October.
Is it the kind of thing where you actually will have a table, we could have a sign, we could just
Yes,
sort of be there and have,
exactly.
get the energy coaches who are free, who maybe also stand around? This is the kind of thing, that
Yeah.
kind of thing, if there
Well,
are any left.
I will reach out to them, but none of them basically has continued. So
Okay,
it'll be certainly me and
okay, I'll put it
Fred
on my
and Frank.
calendar.
If you guys are available, that would be great.
Just
So
checking
it's
my,
open to all of us basically to could show up and just sort of spread the word and see that one by one thing there and okay.
I've got a couple of hours, Dorothea, but I'd have to leave at 4.
Okay.
Sorry, at 5. At 5.
Okay, then that's from 3 to 5 and we're done.
Oh, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, maybe
Mhm.
a little earlier. At any rate, I've got a 6 p.m. in Newton that I've got to be at.
Okay, are people still able to talk or are people gonna start dropping off? I just want to figure out how to close off our discussion here and figure out whether this whole issue of what people are gonna spend their time on, whether again, it comes back to this, it's that chicken and egg between, or back and forth between what people have time for, what people want to work on, and what we consider some sort of priorities. And it's that juggling, and whether if people are maxed out, what it is, whether we just want to even, or whether I say to you as part of our next meeting, people email me and I just compile what it is you think you want to work on as a combination of what you're interested in and what you have time for, and including Gino and Dorothea, just some summary thing of what it is. And we just look at that master list that I'll just compile it from everybody And we'll see if anything's really missing or something like that, and what synergies there are. And maybe that's a way to move this discussion. I'm just trying to figure out something so that that moves us forward and makes the meetings even more productive to some extent. And whether hearing some more updates, like we're not necessarily time to see what Gino's been up to, or whether there's any updates that we want to hear from either of them that would help us thinking. I could still ask them that if people have 5 minutes to hear whatever 2 cents he might want to put on the table, but whether that idea makes sense to all of you is how to end this meeting. And
Michael, I'd like some clarity, just because at the end of the conversation, I wasn't clear. Dorothea, are you going to be contacting other coordinators to find out what works or doesn't work, or is that not on the table anymore?
I certainly, as I suggested, Fred, the people I know are in the residential climate program. These are 10 towns around us.
Okay.
And I can certainly send an email and ask, guys, we're in the outreach process, what has worked for you and what has not.
Good.
And I'm expecting to hear back from them. When I have information for you, I can share it.
Good,
And
I just
other than
wasn't clear
that,
whether
I
that was an
think,
action item or not, that's all.
yeah. And other than that, I will focus on those two things: building this group of green homeowners in Sherborn and asking them to help us with the outreach, like starting a Zoom group or a network group. And I'm going to focus on, in terms of events, on October 30th. And I'm glad that you and Frank can help me with that, because that's where I think we meet younger folks and we can really make some inroads in terms of understanding what they need and what they want and what they need to hear.
so we agreed before we hear if Gino has some little updates on what's there, any other new opportunities from either of them. We're all going to write a list and send it to me, and we'll see what it looks like compiled. Is that a practical step? People like that? Put your fingers up, or thumbs up or down. I don't know how to. Or you can write me that you don't want to do it for some reason, or you want to do it some other way. I just want to figure out how we move forward.
You know, I think it might make sense, though, to wait a little bit, Michael, on that, because if Dorothy's going to come back with all other ideas that has worked, or perhaps she's going to have some intel on some tasks that we're working on that a lot of the towns say doesn't work, maybe we should have her report back next week after she speaks to the Regional Climate Action Group, and then we can come up with our list.
Either way, if people want to send me something, fine. If not, we'll see how it goes.
Okay.
I have my list of what I do, but okay. Gino, anything you want to share?
I have a couple of updates and a small anecdote I thought you might be interested in.
Good.
The geothermal study at Pine Hill is supposed to be completed around now. I sent a reminder email to the consultant. I haven't heard back yet. I just sent that today. As you know, Michael, we have Sean had some concerns about the Green Communities projects in Town Hall. I reached out to Guardian about changing the scope slightly in terms of the type of insulation from cellulose to spray foam, and they're interested in coming back out and taking a look and making
Great.
that change. And then the street lights. The good news on the street lights is that we got the utility incentive letter today, which that incentive is not quite 22,000, 21,000 in that range, whereas the estimate when we submitted the Green Communities grant was 14,000. So we have like an extra 7,000 or 8,000. Not that where that might come in handy is the change in scope for the town
Exactly.
hall. We may be able to shift things around a bit. So I'm hopeful on that. As for the anecdote, you just might enjoy this, but when the Franklin aggregation program came out on the Franklin website, Franklin Facebook page, a few people were like, I'm opting out. I don't trust the town. I'm doing it. So last night, somebody posted, by the way, for those of you who opted out of the municipal aggregation, the national grid rate for winter is 14.2 versus the aggregation rate of 10.7. I mean, he didn't say ha ha, but that was certainly the tone of the, and then other people were responding, how can I get into that? I didn't know anything about this. Well, who's doing this? So anyway, just,
That's cute, but the 10 cents is for the standard, the lowest.
there was
Um,
there was no choice. It was 10.7 for
How much
100
renewable?
for 100% Texas wind,
Wow. Sweet,
3
even though
years.
people complain about Texas wind, but that's interesting. Okay.
Um,
That is
G-
cute.
Gino, since I'm taking the minutes, that issue about the streetlights, you said that it came in under estimate?
We're getting more
No.
incentive.
The utility incentive came in about 50% above.
Oh, okay.
So
And I
we
think
might have
that's
some money.
because it's going to change
Yeah,
in January.
right.
Yeah, just so you know, the street light, and right, the insulation that's supposed to do a lot more sealing and lessening of the heating load and possibly the air conditioning load in town hall, that we want to try to pursue a different approach to how
Right.
the attic is sealed. And that might be more costly. So this might be an opportunity that we could redirect funds within the Green Community Grant
Right.
to a much better design for the attic improvement. But that's great. Okay. What about next meeting? Do we do in a couple of weeks? Let's see. Okay, hold on here. Pulling up a calendar here. Do we do the 26th? Do we do later or whatever? I don't know. What are people feeling?
I think that week is fine.
26 works for me.
I'm on a conference, I can't make that.
Well, we can't understand what you're saying anyway, so. So I guess that was, I think it's a no, but I could have been a yes for all I could tell. So. So.
Brad,
What's the real thing, Brad?
Brad, are you not available at all that week or just the Tuesday? 26th to the 28th. Okay, that's
With all the work that we have and with all the kind of planning and with us trying to work on this working document plan, that if we want to do that for town meeting, Michael, do you think it makes sense to meet a little more frequently over a period of time and then we go back to the 2 weeks, or is that just pushing everybody to the point where they don't want to be part of this anymore? Or is it just too much?
I'm not sure I understood whether you're trying to meet more earlier than 2 weeks. I guess if I heard right, Brad,
I think we should meet weekly for a period of time to get a bunch of this stuff worked out. And then once we're kind of doing the work that you want to try to accomplish, which is getting people in these groups doing actual work, then we can report out on a like bi-weekly basis. But until then, to meet.
well, I have enough to do for the next few weeks anyway. It's a matter of what's gonna change if we, and Dorothy needs time to hear back from her survey in terms of what's going to be redirected. I mean, for you, in your case, right, you're trying to probably figure out what it is you're going to sink your teeth into. Although if you guys are really going to spend some time on this, on the community action plan, I think you have something to do to keep busy for a few weeks in terms of your time. So I'd be willing, I don't know if I'd want to meet more frequently than or at least at the moment, for 2 weeks. The question is, I think, Brad, you'll have to do a thumbs up or down. Can you meet on the 26th? Just to be clear that you couldn't, I wasn't sure.
How about Monday, the 25th?
Yeah. I think I could do the 25th.
The 25th.
Tom and Fred?
I'm good both those days.
Great. Frank,
Um,
Dorothy, and Gino, 25th, Monday, good?
Yeah.
Done.
Whoops. Just looking at my calendar here. What in the world is going on here? My phone's not behaving. Let's see. Okay, yeah. Okay, 25th to 3:30.
Yep.
25th on Monday. 3:30.
Like a plan.
Can you
Okay.
stay on a few minutes after the meeting, just so that I can get caught up on the logistics of the minutes and where things stand with that and what I need to do for that?
I'm gonna just finalize them and send them in. We approved them. I think it might be simpler at this point for me to, by the time I just save it, accept the track edits, I can just as well send it into the person who authored it as well as into the town clerk. So I'll just do that. Okay. Okay, anybody else want to say anything before we close the meeting? Okay, then I move to adjourn at 5:41.
Seconded.
And okay, discussion. Okay, Michael, I. Tom,
I
Fred,
Aye.
Andy.
Aye.
Okay, good. I hope you're going to a good place, Tom, wherever you're driving to. As I suddenly realized you're wandering around.
we're heading home from East Hampton.
Oh, what a nice place to come from.
What a nice, exactly.
There, I will leave it at that. Okay, that's it then.
All right, guys. Thank you.
Okay. See
Bye-bye.
everybody.
Bye.